So let's take a step back to Roswell. We talked about it a little bit. What's your sense about that whole time? Roswell and just Area 51 and the sightings and also the follow-on mythology around those sightings
Of
that's
course.
with us today.
All right. So,
Where do I get started?
well, I mean, it is a mythology here, right? The mythology of Roswell. It's very religious, like in the sense that there's a pilgrimage to Roswell people make, and they go to. There's a festival there as well, like a religious festival. You can get little kitschy stuff like you can get at a religious festival there. So it's very much like a place of pilgrimage where a hierophany occurred, and a hierophany is basically contact with non-human intelligence. Okay. So non-human intelligence is thought to have contacted humans or crashed at this place in Roswell, New Mexico. Now, what's fascinating is that I begin my book by going out to a crash site in New Mexico. I have to get blindfolded with to tell you the truth, the story is that I'm with Tyler, who's an invisible, and he wants to show me a place in New Mexico where a crash happened. And he says that he thinks that I need to see physical evidence because I don't believe. And so I said, I'll go, but I'm going to bring a friend of mine. And he said, no, you have to go alone. He goes, it's a place that is on government owned property and it's a no-fly zone. And when you go, you'll be blindfolded. And I said, I definitely need to bring a friend. So he said, well, who do you want to bring? I just had met this university scientist who's very well known, and I call him James in my book. And I had a feeling James would definitely want to do this. And I asked James, and he said, I'll go tomorrow. Okay. So I suggested this to Tyler, and Tyler said, absolutely not, And I thought, I know he's going to look up James and he's going to say yes. Because if anybody can figure out what this material is that we're going to go look for, it's going to be James. He has the instruments. And so Tyler did, in fact, look him up and finally said, okay, you can go. So we both head out there and we get blindfolded, and Tyler takes us out there. It takes about 40 minutes outside of a certain place in New Mexico. So in terms of Roswell, this is what I can say, is that according to Tyler, there were about 7 crashes out in the 1940s in New Mexico in various places. We went to one of them, according to Tyler. At the time, I was completely an atheist with regard to anything that had to do with UFOs. So we were out there. We had specially configured metal detectors for these metals, and we did find these. Okay, and they've since been studied by various scientists, material scientists, so forth. And I believe Jacques talked about not those particular ones, but others on the Joe Rogan show.
Mm-hmm.
They're anomalies. So there are scientists don't. I'm not a scientist, so I can't weigh in on whether I just believe these people I believe because they're well-known scientists.
What do you mean they're not anomalies? So
they are anomalous.
Oh, anomalous in terms of the materials that are naturally occurring on Earth.
Yes.
Okay. So there's some kind of inklings of evidence that that something happened in Roswell in terms of crashes of alien technology. Now, what else is there to the mythology? So there's some crashes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of epic.
It's pretty epic, yeah.
And what else? Like what are we supposed to take away from this? I mean,
right. Yeah. So it's weird. Okay. So there's this. Okay. So in religious studies, like I said, we call it a hierophany, which is the meeting of a non-human intelligent thing, whatever it is, an angel, a god, whatever, a goddess, or an alien with humans. And that's the place. Okay. So the place is New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So New Mexico becomes folded into the mythology of this new religion, is what I call a new type of religion, of the UFO. And it becomes ground zero for this new mythology. Just like Mecca is the place where Muslims go, they have to go, right, at least once in their lives. It's a pilgrimage place now. So in my book, that's how I tell it. Now, what about Roswell in the public imagination? Obviously, according to Annie Jacobson, who's good, she's a great author, investigative journalist. She's written about Roswell too. I don't agree with all of what she comes up with, but part of it is that there's a lot of military stuff going on there that is classified, and there's a reason why you can't get in, and nor would you want to, right? So, so there's a lot of experimentation going on there. I don't believe that has to do with ETs, frankly. But in the imaginations of Americans, Roswell is that place. But I went to a different place. And apparently there are several places in New Mexico. Now, strangely enough, I traveled back to New Mexico at the very end chapter of my book, but I don't go there physically. I go there through the story of a Catholic nun who actually believes that she bilocated to New Mexico in the 1600s. So it was very strange. And I was at the Vatican at the Space Observatory when I made that connection that she probably went to she believes she went to this very place that I had gone.
Can you elaborate on a little bit? Like, what does it mean to go to that place? So
for her?
For her. I mean, so we're kind of breaking down the barrier between what it means to be at a place and time. Right?
Right. I agree with you. This is the field of religious studies. So, and again, I don't say it's true in my book. I just say it's a very strange coincidence that I'm at the Vatican Observatory. In fact, I'd finished my book, but while I was at the Vatican Observatory, I was there with Tyler, and we were looking at the records. They're called the trial records, but they're the canonization records of these two saints. Yeah. Each was said to have done amazing things. One was Joseph of Cupertino, who levitated, okay, or is said to have levitated. The other was Maria of Agreda from Spain. They're contemporaries in the 1600s, who was said to have been able to bilocate, which is to be in two places at once, okay? So this is a belief in Catholicism that certain very holy people can do these kinds of things, like levitate, which, by the way, is also associated with UFO abductions. People get levitated out of their beds and things like that. So we were sent there by a billionaire who was interested in levitation and bilocation. And since I could get into the Vatican and I knew the director of the Vatican Observatory, both Tyler and I were able to go to the secret archives and look at the canonization records, and then go to Castle Gandolfo, which is about an hour from the Vatican, where the first observatory, the Space Observatory of the Vatican, is. The second one is in Arizona, and it has a much larger telescope. So we went, and Brother Guy gave me the keys to the archive. I said, look at anything you want. And I got to see a lot of stuff by Carl Sagan, by the way. I know you talked about, it was awesome. So they have a whole section on the search for extraterrestrial life. And they don't, by the way.
How awesome is that?
It was awesome, yeah. So we got to stay there. They have a scholar's quarters.
Yeah.
And so they had two. And so Tyler stayed in one and I stayed in the other. And Brother Guy probably shouldn't have been so nice to me and given me the keys, because I when I got home, we were there for 2 weeks. When I got home, I got this frantic phone call from him, and he basically said, Diana, he goes, do you remember where you put the original Kepler? And so I had this Kepler, right? Yeah. And so I misplaced it. Luckily, I remembered where it went. I was like, oh gosh, thank goodness I found it. But he'll probably change the rules of the Vatican Observatory after my visit. So Maria is, she's actually in the history of our country, in that she first wrote a cosmography of what she said was the spinning Earth. And this was in the 1600s. And that's her first book. And she wrote that. And then she said that she was transported on the wings of angels to the New World. And she said that she met a culture of people, and she basically told them about the faith of Catholicism, okay? And then what happened was that the people that she described the fauna, she described the people and everything like that. And so there were actually missionaries there. Mm-hmm. And when they went to try to convert some of the people who already lived there, apparently they already knew a bunch of stuff. And they said, how did you know all this stuff? And they said, This lady in blue came and told us, and they said, "Did it look like this?" And they showed them. They obviously didn't have a photograph, but they had a picture of a sister, a nun, and they said, "Yeah, she wore similar clothes, but she was much younger, right?" And these guys were, thought that was weird. But when they went back to Spain, they found that this woman had been doing that in her mind, had been traveling.
I mean, I don't know what to make of it. There's so many things that are sort of forcing you to kind of go outside of, I'm of many minds. I have most of my days spent with very rigorous scientific kind of things and even engineering kind of things. And then I'm also open-minded, and just the entirety of the idea of extraterrestrial life forces you to think outside of conventional boundaries of thought, current scientific thought. Let's put it that way. And your story right now is certainly an example
It's
of that.
freaking you out.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's a nice way to put it.